Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So here I want to cover my Module 29 build for the Wizard. This will be something you can work towards to maximize your damage. Be aware the base of this build is about solo content and playing with random players. I will have a section later on about group optimization where you will want to take into consideration the bonuses that the group can provide you, and you can switch some things around to get an extra damage boost. This build is accompanied by a document which covers everything I'm using. You can see the purposes of the build right there, and it's going to give you 90% in all of your damage stats, maximizing that damage potential. It will come with a whole load of particular damage buffs, including fire themed ones, which you may want to switch out if you're running other specific content. More on that later. There'll be timestamps on the play bar below where you can skip to any section you want, with a link in the video description with the document. First of all, we're going to start with our power setup, the most important part. And we begin with single target. You will want to have two separate loadouts, one for single target, one for multi-target. Usually before every single boss fight, you'll have a campfire just like this, and you'll go switch to that single target loadout from what you would have been using, most likely your multi-target setup when you were just beating up ad groups. This is also the build you'll use when you're just out questing. Your AoE setup, area of effect, multi-target, same thing. So with regards to what powers to use, this is what I recommend right here. It gives you the best baseline abilities to use in order to maximize your damage. However, you might want to switch a few things to optimize when running with other wizards. For example, you can have one wizard who's supporting the group, and then you can go on to use more personal benefits. For example, if you already have a wizard using Swath and critical conflagration, then you can switch over to chilling and orb of imposition. That way you can maximize your damage further. Additionally, you would have that support wizard who is using critical conflagration and Swath to then also have Ray of Enfeeblement. You'll switch it out instead of say Chill Strike there and run it as Spell Mastery, increasing everybody's magical damage against the target. It is well worth, if running with two wizards or more in party content, to have one on the support build and the others on the more maximum damage setups. But ultimately, if you're by yourself, this is what I would go with. If you need some multi-target damage because the boss is spawning in some ads, switch like Repel over to Icy Terrain, and if you need even more multi-target, switch Chill Strike over to Fireball, and that way you have a decent mix of single target and multi-target. But in most fights, you will just be using true single target to beat up the boss as quickly as possible. Now keep in mind of your magic missile, you'll want to use this to maintain your arcane mastery stacks. It's important you have 5 at all times to buff up the effect of entangling force along with just the baseline damage boost it provides. Be aware they last 8 seconds, and you need to make sure you keep refreshing them by casting an arcane ability every 8 seconds, whether that's your repel, your entangling force, or your magic missile. You will occasionally need to use one magic missile to maintain them. But from there we go to your rotation, and particularly artifact calls where it's super important. An artifact call is where everybody uses their debuff artifacts, increasing the damage against the boss upwards of 3-4 times the amount. So it becomes vitally important to maximize your damage within the 10 seconds that those artifact buffs are active. But it greatly depends on if you have the Tactician's Precision Insignia bonus, and even if you have 2 of them. These mounts are very inaccessible, so you can be excused to not have them. But look forward to getting them into the future if you're still building app. They are a huge gain. But this is your rotation with 0 Tactician's Precision. You need to use all of these abilities within 10 seconds in that order. When you have 1 Tactician's Precision, you can use these abilities in this order. You'll notice you can use a few more encounter powers. And if you have 2 Tactician's Precision, you can use all of these in that order. You'll need to practice again getting all of these powers done within 10 seconds. Super important to squeeze that all in the artifact call. You'll have to learn the timing and get used to it, and it'll come with practice, and you'll be able to maximize your damage output. And that is pretty much single target for your boss fights. Every other time outside the artifact call, you're just using your powers as they come off cooldown until you approach the next artifact call. Then you want to hold out on casting them and make sure they're ready for that next artifact call and they're fully off cooldown so you can actually do that rotation properly. You of course also need to make sure you have your daily power for that artifact call, or this rotation also doesn't work, because then you have no tacticians and you're pretty much at this rotation if you have no daily power. Moving on from here, we go to multi-target. So we switch our loadout and our powers change a bit. I highly recommend having 2 loadouts because it gets pretty important to have these 2 differing feats here. You want to have directed flames, but again, that's your entire setup here with those spells. There is a few variations, like using evocation instead of swath if you have another wizard in the group using swath, and you can also then put icy terrain on your spell mastery if you want to be able to cast it from a distance like this rather than being up close to the enemies, but you will lose out on a multi-target effect of your chill strike, which means you would then need to use fanning the flame, which is not great. And in most cases, if you can afford getting close to the enemies, use icy terrain. Particularly in just solo content, enemies are going to attack you anyway. There's no point being so far away. But in order how to use your powers, well, it's pretty simple. You have this setup and you're just going up to your enemies and you're using your powers when they go off cooldown. I generally start with a fireball or a chill strike, and then you can get the rest of your abilities out as you get up close to them like this. And it just, yeah, it's up to you kind of. But it is better to get your damage over time abilities out quicker. That way they have more time to actually do some damage. But it depends how quickly are you moving between groups, when can you use what abilities, and yeah, your daily power, I do recommend using your Furious Simulation to just group up enemies like this and kill them. It's very powerful for that, and it's really cool. They did nerf your Arcane Singularity a lot, so we no longer really use that. But that's pretty much it for multi-target. Now we move to your race and ability scores. And for this build and setup, I recommend the Wood Elf, just to give you the bonus critical strike. For your ability scores, you will want to focus on your dexterity and your intelligence, giving you those boosts. However, to min-max a little bit, you'll want to put like 2 points in charisma, because you won't really need them in dexterity. Now, in terms of the gear you're using, well, all of it will contribute to your stats, leading you to all these 90% while you're attacking an enemy in combat. Now, be aware that you don't have to use this exact gear I have. There's plenty of alternatives, and just check the collections. There's quite a few things coming from this new module, like these weapons just from the campaign, the mythic armor from the new master dungeon. There is legendary armor, which basically has the same effect here except the armor piece, but you could use, say, the Dragon Hunter armor piece, the Mighty Curse with the same bonus. And there's plenty alternatives throughout the game that will suffice as well. I won't dive into them into this video, but you can look forward to, say, a gear progression video, which will cover some very useful options you can get as you're developing. This, again, is something to work towards at the end game level when you're min-maxing your character. You can work towards this during the months of Module 29. As per my document, you can see the different gear locations for exactly what I'm using. Again, a lot of it coming from the new dungeon, which will be accessible this coming Tuesday. However, if you're not running fire-themed maps, you might want to switch out your boots and your shirt. I would recommend your boots to be switched to the sharp long boots or the rusted iron leggings. That way they give a 5% damage boost. Or if you're in like wild space, you can run the damage specific boots for those from the Imperial Dungeon. And then same with the shirt. You'll switch off from using the damage bonus over to like the encounter cooldown reduction from this one. it will still allow you to gain the 2% accuracy from the set, so it actually is pretty useful with the high item level. Also, if you want to maximize your multi-target damage output, you could potentially switch your headpiece over to the Dark Maiden's headpiece here, giving you action points when you kill an enemy. I don't really think it's worth it while it's on legendary. You'll need to get this thing upgraded via Mensa Branson, and then it gives 3% action points per kill. Just a teeny little bit of a bonus so you can cast your daily power a little bit more often. There is other gear pieces you can use that would say give damage bonuses in certain areas, or even just some like bonus accuracy to have a more reliable baseline. From there, we touch on then the modifications, so the armor kits and jewels, and yeah, it's pretty much just combat advantage all here. And then you can see in the document, we've got 3 critical severities, 1 critical strike. Moving then to the enchantments, you can see this is the setup. Now be aware that your defensive ones don't really matter. The important ones are offense, utility, your overloads, your combat enchantment, and the bonus one is also optional. It gives you such a tiny boost, it might not be worth it until the very end of the game for you to invest resources in that. The most important one would be first the lightning flash with the sheer amount of stats it's giving you. Again, the defensive slots, just use that as like a storage place for alternative enchantments that you might need to switch between different gear pieces. But sure, if you wanted to min-max in terms of defensive enchantments, which to be honest, don't bother with, you could have all 4 garnets. Moving to the artifacts, you will want to have one that will support your team. So currently the magma one is bugged, and that makes it better than everything else just because it's multiplicative, but expect that to change in the near future, and then you'll want to go back to actually using a support effect. You can see a list of the different ones here that are really good. You'll use them during artifact calls, and everybody else will use a unique one, and you'll be able to do insane burst damage against the boss. That's how endgame works. The rest of them is this one for 1800 item level and stats. It's a new one, so is this one, and then this is just like a lockbox one. And just this combination works best with these stats, and you can see exactly where they're coming from here in the document. From there, we jump to our boons. You'll do your campaigns, you'll get your points, and you'll invest them. Get all of these power ones, get all of these offensive stat ones. Get the movement speed. Get the demonic mastery if you're running content with demons a lot. Get your forte, your action points and recharge speed. Get your bloodlust and your life lessons. You will then want to get blessed advantage. You'll also want to get blessed resilience and lingering medicine. Then you can get your defense, awareness, crit avoidance, and all your hit points. That's generally the best priority. I just have 67 points, and this is good as is. I don't really have to work towards getting much more. Not important. For the guild boons, we just have this here: power, defense, and utility. Revive sickness, super important if you're running endgame. Otherwise, movement speed or mount speed, particularly if you're solo and just running around the zones. Then we go to our companions. So here you're going to run a striker companion. And yeah, there's a lot of options you can use. You can check my document linked below, and you can see them all kind of ranked here. Be aware Xuna will be getting nerfed and probably going slightly below the Mage Slayer. That is yet to be done, and I'll test her and make a video on that when it happens. Otherwise, the Blaspheme Assassin, you can read the text there, it's not reliable, and it usually can't output that much damage unless it's a very long fight. Overall, you might want to just switch to using support companions to increase your entire team's effectiveness. Just look for one that does some decent damage and you'll be good to go. As for companion gear, this stuff is outdated. It's going to be 600 item level less than the best you can obtain, which will be from the new campaign, Mountain of Flame, right here in the campaign store. You will want to get these ones in particular: the Molten Sword Knots of the companion, accuracy, combat advantage, and forte. It will fit best into this build, and it'll give you that 1800 total item level boost, meaning you're nearly going to be 1500 item level with that. I haven't done the grind yet, so we're still stuck on some older stuff. Just don't get this, even if you're new. It's a waste of astral alignments. I wish I never got it. As for the bonuses here, run Precision for the crit strike for now, Minsk for the damage bonus, Neverwinter Knight for the damage bonus, Batiri for the boss damage bonus, Drizzt or some other companion with crit strike and crit severity. There is in my companion document linked below a list of different companions, and you can see all the ones that are going to give like crit strike and crit severity are right here. There's quite a few different options you could have. And then there's the Dark Dealer, combat advantage and accuracy in the utility slot. The alternative in the utility slot there is like a book imp with the exact same stats. Be aware when you're going into multi-target, you'll want to switch 2 of the bonuses out. So we're going over to combat advantage here instead of Minsk with the golden cat. But you could just as well have the Phase Spider, which will go in your defensive slot, or Fey Panther, Redeemed Fallen. These will all be fine. It's not that important in multi-target. You can even just stick with Minsk as well. It's okay. And your Batiri that you normally had here, you want to have the Spine Devil. It's a great damage bonus in multi-target. Whenever using those encounter powers, you have a chance to basically deal 100 magnitude damage around you. From there, we go to our mounts. In our current tab, we want to use a combat power here that's single target for those boss fights. And in multi-target, you'll want to use one that's multi-target, like this Schools in Session. Now for the single target ones, there's multiple options. You can see right here all the different single mount combat powers you can use, but ideally you use one that is magical. So one of these top 3. Literally no difference between them. As for multi-target, we have the Space Guppy School Mount. And that is because it currently has 15 target cap and is outright just the best right now. However, be aware that they will be updating the other ones, and so just hold out. Don't get this mount, but if you have it, use it. Otherwise, we have rapid accuracy, but I would recommend having ferocity there from this lion if you plan to play like master content with coordinated groups, as you won't need the accuracy from rapid accuracy. But now moving to the stable, it's going to be the same for multi-target and single target. We have 2 Tacticians, 1 Enchanter's Hex, and 2 Warlord's Motivation. Otherwise, the insignias themselves are a different mix there, and you can see in my document the different types we're using. 4 aggressions, 3 skills, 12 brutalities, 1 dominance. As for the colors, you'll want the ones with these different bonuses. You cannot use multiple ones of the same bonus. These are the ones I found are the best, but don't prioritize upgrading them until much later in the game. Then we go to our consumables. Here we use Flask of Potencies, Watermelon Sorbet, Wildstorm Elixir, and Ratatouille, the guild food. The first 2 readily available from the auction house, and the watermelon food from events, and the elixirs just from evoking up here, but you'll also find them in the auction house. I would recommend having some squash soup, as when you run some coordinated content, you'll be needing that instead of watermelon sorbet. As for the belt items, I do recommend, if we look in single target, to have your Stone of Health, have your Owlbear figurine or Dragonfire is okay as well, and have your Bell of Empowerment if you're in fire-themed maps, because while you're in fire-themed maps, you gain the extra combat advantage from these weapons. But if you're not in fire-themed maps, this build works best with the Spider Totem from your North Dark Reaches campaign. You'll get it through these tasks here. As for then multi-target, we're using, again, the Stone of Health, a Doohickey. This is the mythic one coming with the next Gond event. You can already obtain it if you have the materials with module 29. And then, yeah, same story with the Spider Totem and the Bell. But that is ultimately it. My entire build for module 29. However, if you're running group content, it is recommended that you take advantage of certain buffs that your team will provide you. It is the last section of my document. You can see the different bonuses that the group can give you, like Pack Tactics, Mystic Aura, Runic Aura, Portobello, Flapjack, Tutor, Paladin Crit Aura, Tamed Raptor. All are going to give you pretty massive gains to your stats. So you'll want to work around fitting those in and gaining damage bonuses elsewhere. With pack tactics, to make that bonus combat advantage work, you'll want to either switch some companion gear around or switch some jewels over to awareness, giving you more survivability. Mystic Aura, switch off using rapid accuracy to ferocity. Portobello, Flapjack, and Tutor, switch your helmet over to a helmet that's going to give you crit strike, like the Abyss Conqueror's Healing Guard or the Serene Hood. And then you can switch your Precision Companion bonus over to a support effect, like Armor Break, Vulnerability, Dulled Senses. You attack a lot, will have a nice high uptime on those. The Paladin Crit Aura, you can switch your arms over to like the Star Weave ones, just to give your item level and a little bit more action point gain. And the Tamed Raptor, you can switch your weapons, the Magma ones, over to like Solarum or Mirage, depending on what content you're in. And then the Red Dwarf Ring, you can switch that over to the Sapphire Abyssal Loop or another damage bonus ring, depending on what content you're in. Like the bonus for Wild Space Ring, or the bonus against Beholders, or extra damage in Underdark, damage against dragons, or even just encounter power damage. There's a lot of different options. But again, you will have to adjust your ratings a little bit, and you can probably get away with just switching a few enchantments to fix with that. So ultimately you can gain some extra damage boosts and buffs depending on what your team can give you. So it can be well worth it, but it will depend on you actually running with a coordinated group who's actually using those abilities. Ultimately, I hope this helps. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below and I'll get back to you when I can. A massive thank you again to all of these channel members for their added support, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.